we're talking today about balancing two ideas at the same time. So one of the things I like to do when I start talking about, two moving things and we've got to make this one heavier and plumper and this one lighter and more delicate, is I try to get the physical idea of the difference between what's happening in the fingers and in the arms, right? By comparing it to some other analogy that I think it's really important. A lot of kids in elementary school have little science classes. I hope they still do this, but they did it in my science class where they would give the kids these scales, these measurement scales, and kids would learn early on that, certain heavier objects go further down, right, on the scale, and lighter objects suspend themselves and vice versa. So I'll talk that analogy about the use of scales. You put a heavy object here, it sinks lower, right? The lighter object is more suspended. And that's what we're going to learn how to do with our hands today. So I give them that analogy, but then I want to also give them a physical realization of what it feels like to have one side of your body heavier than the other. Anybody have any ideas of some kind of physical technique we can show them about one side of the body feels heavier than the others? Anybody in the chat thinking what I'm thinking right now? We could do something physically with them if they stood up, right? I'm not going to stand up right now, but if they stand up, they're standing on their 2 feet like this, right? Okay. And you ask them, okay, we know we're standing and our weight is centered, but this time I want you to stand and I want you to lean to the right, or it might be left here in the screen, and lean on one foot heavier than the other. And kids understand what that is. Your left foot is still touching, right? But we really feel that weight on that side. All of our body weight is centered over that right foot. Try that. And I have them stand up in the lesson and we do it. And then I said, let's do it the other way. Okay. And I don't want them to swerve over with their body like this. I just say, stand on that left hand, put most of your weight there, and the other one is lighter, right? Okay. That's called balance. We're balancing on our left versus our right. Nancy says you could hop on one foot. That's another way. You could take it not Nancy. Yeah, it is Nancy. Sorry. You could hop on one foot. But one of the things I'm trying to do, Nancy, and that's a very good idea, is get them to hop maybe on both feet, right? Both feet are actually touching the ground at some point, but most of the weight is on the right or the left. Okay, so they can feel lightness on one side of the body and heaviness on the other side. Gabrielle has a suggestion here. Fill one arm with rocks and the other with feathers. That's very good. You could say, okay, this arm, and I was getting to that next. They could be seated with their lap right here, and you can say, can you drop that heavy arm? And I know the Fabers talk about the heavy wet ropes, right? And that's another analogy. Drop that heavy arm over here. And then let's drop the other hand here, and it's got that light, feathery feel. Really good analogy there, Gabrielle. And Faye says, many times I have students put their palms up, and I place an empty plastic egg in one and call it harmony. There you go. I'm doing this. Let me see if I can get that. It's counterintuitive here. So here's my left. It would be the heavier one on the right, right? Okay, and the lighter one in the left. So she's saying place a plastic egg in the left one, so it's very light, and then heavy paperweight in the other. Excellent analogies. One of the things I like to do is work with the body in a seated position with the lap in front of you, right? And have them take both arms and drop the weight, right? And think of, okay, what was Gabrielle saying? The rocks on this side, the heavy wet ropes, and then on the other side we have the feathers. Excuse me. Okay, so they get that realization right there on their lap. And let's now do it with our hands. Maybe not just the palms falling into the legs, but let's go ahead and get our hands. And I'll say, take your rounded hand position, right? And when we drop, take your right hand, and I want to do it the opposite for the purposes of the screen. Okay, take your right hand, and we're going to drop them and land at the same time. But this one is going to have more weight over here on the right hand, and this one's a little more suspended, but they actually touch at the same time. And one thing I like to do is do it right on my fall board, right on the sponge. Okay, so they're dropping, weighted here, lighter here, but they're doing it simultaneously. So that's the whole key, is to learn to do this simultaneously, heavy on one side, light on the other. I do it with the arms like we talked about. I love the contributions from our teachers today of holding the implements in your hands like this. That's a good one too. But the reason I do the lap thing is because I really I want them to feel the fall of the weight from the shoulders. We fall, right, like that. And let's do it together. And you feel like you're almost really leaning on this side. In fact, you are. And then we do it with the rounded hand shapes too. And they land with a very secure rounded hand that doesn't crumble like that. Okay. So they're really supporting the impact of that weight with a good strong bridge. Okay. Wonderful ways to get the physical reality of it across to your students. Now let's go ahead and talk about some ways that we can refine it. So this is what I would do at the piano. Okay, we've done the gross motor movements. We need to refine it now. So what I would do is I would take them to the piano, and I'm going to turn the cameras, is I would do single finger threes like this. I might brace them, right, that, brace them on the side, right? And I'll have them land, and let me just go ahead and do this with my keyboard. I'll turn everything so you guys can see it. Okay, Facebook, I think you can see it as well. Okay, I'm going to put the fall board down. I probably would do these single finger activities on a fall board with a sponge on there for no fingernail scratching. Okay, I'll go up here. So the one thing I want to do is what I call a single finger balancing act. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the thirds like this, and I'll say, now let's drop our weight on both sides right here with our threes. But as you drop, I want you to, well, actually, this is what I do first. Before I drop, I just tell them to place their fingers here like this. And I'll say, now place them there and lean to the right, away from the left. Now lean to the left, and the right becomes a little more suspended, right? So they're learning how to lean on one, lean on the other, lean, lean, right? Now let's do the single fingers dropping. So I'll say, let's go about this high. And then when you drop more weight on the right and drop away from that left hand, like this. And your shoulder might even be down because you're plunging so much weight into that. And vice versa, your shoulder may come down a little bit with that plunge of weight on the left. But they are simultaneously going into the keyboard. So they're really practicing the drop, okay? Note that when they're dropping, the speed of the attack is a really important factor as well for one side to be weightier and sound fuller. So by that I mean this, and I'll show you right here with my threes. Let me come a little closer. Here you go. Here are my threes right there. And let's say I'm going to make this one heavier, right? I would probably start this one a little higher and this one a little lower, so that this one here on the right has a little more quick drop than the left has a slower drop. Because we know that a quick drop into a key makes a louder sound, right? Even without lots of weight behind it. So we're going to learn about quick drop versus a slower drop, or a drop that's a little higher, right? And away from the key. This one's a little closer. And we go down, and the quick drop has the most weight coming through. So think about that aspect as well. So then we take it to the keyboard to test it.